On this episode of Militaria at the museum, we examine the combat uniform of a Royal Canadian Navy Beach Commando, worn by an unlikely figure. Then, we uncover the 1793 Treatise on Field Fortification, a comprehensive guide showcasing an individual's understanding of warfare, fortifications, and military logistics. Finally, we journey through Stanley Airport, where one of Canada's major contributions to the war effort was made through the British Commonwealth Air Training Program. Beyond museum exhibits lies a hidden realm of archived artifacts that hold the keys to unlocking intriguing stories from the past. Come along as I meet with experts at the Army, Naval, and Aviation museums, where I've been granted special access to pull back the curtains and reveal the secrets of their militaria. My name is Sandy Hiltz, and all my life I've been captivated by military history. Now, I have the rare opportunity to explore a collection of fascinating military artifacts on Militaria at the museum. At the Navy Museum, I'm exploring a Royal Canadian Navy Beach Commando's uniform with Ariana House. This uniform embodies the courage and decisive action required by those who led amphibious operations under incredibly harsh conditions, where quick thinking and logistical precision were crucial for success.
I understand that you have a fascinating and certainly unusual story about a chaplain of the Second World War.
Yeah, we have a uniform from Chaplain James Harold Graven, who was a part of the Normandy D-Day landings.
Really? Do you think we could take a look at that?
Yes, of course. It's a very interesting story about beach commandos. Beach commandos were the first group of troops that would head on to the beaches at Normandy so that they could clear the path for the assault troops and the supplies to get through quickly. Beach Commando W, the Canadian division of the Commandos, was comprised mostly of the Royal Canadian Navy Volunteer Reserve. They would have volunteered for this operation, however, they would have had to meet very strict requirements. They had to be under the age of 35, they had to have no history of mental illness in themselves or in their family members, and no chronic illnesses such as asthma, arthritis, bronchitis, and heart disease.
Tell me, what identifies this as a commando jacket?
So you'll see on your side there is a patch, and there are 3 symbols on there. They represent the Navy, Air Force, and the Army. Other than the badge that the beach commandos would have had, there was not a lot to differentiate them on the beach. This was due to the fact that they didn't want the enemies to see that they were a specialized force and to be targeted.
This is obviously a uniform of someone who was associated with the Navy and a commando. Would there be a difference between the different commando uniforms for different forces?
So there would be a change in color, so Army would be green, Air Force would be tan, but other than that, they had the same badges. Sometimes you would see under their Canada flash, it would say commando. Unfortunately, on this uniform, we don't have that, but that was the only thing that really differentiated them was the color.
I see. So that badge is really sort of a show of unity between the 3 forces.
Yep, exactly.
Could you explain to me a little bit about the role of a beach commando?
Yep, so they arguably played one of the most important roles during the invasion of D-Day. They cleared the lines so that the troops were able to invade the beach more quickly.
So these would have been the first people setting foot in France.
Yep, that's exactly right. D-Day was a combined operation with the British, Canadian, and American militaries on June 6, 1944, when they invaded the beaches of Normandy. They invaded 3 beaches that they codenamed Gold, Juno, and Sword, and the naval operations commenced at 6:30 a.m.
Going into situations like this, being the first people to be landing on the shores of France, I would imagine that they would have had to have had incredibly rigorous training to get to that point.
Their training was very intense. They started in the winter of 1943 into 1944, where they started with 6 months basic training in Scotland. This training, even though it was basic, they started off with doing obstacle courses with live ammunition. They would do night beach landings, and actually 15% of their casualties happened only during basic training.
Really?
Yes, just because of that live ammunition.
That's incredible. So it wasn't even when they were reaching the front lines that they were in danger, it was just getting to that point.
Yes, and then even from there, they went on for 14 more weeks of specialized training in England, where they rode motorcycles, drove tanks, detonated bombs, trained in chemical warfare, snipers, and so much more. The people a part of the commandos were very crucial, and even though they were just volunteer reservists, they had to go through this extensive training. The mantra of this training was that if they were going to get killed, they would rather have it done in training rather than when they were on the beaches when someone is depending on them. So this would have required lots of dedication and courage to be a part of this.
What sort of individuals would have comprised the commandos?
They were mostly comprised of Royal Canadian Navy volunteer reservists.
Really? Oh, that's particularly interesting. I mean, it really shows us that these would have been men with an incredible sense of duty to their king and country.
They were very courageous. Even though the Beach Commando was formed about a year before D-Day, it was only supposed to be a backup to the British equivalent Force J. It wasn't until 2 weeks after this decision that they realized they did need the Canadian division of Commando W, and then they were sent to go with the assault.
Are the commandos something that exists within the Canadian Armed Forces today?
Unfortunately not. The commandos are more of a wartime operation. However, there are specialized forces in Joint Task Force 2 that are more similar to the commandos back then.
Who did this particular jacket belong to?
So this is a really interesting one. This belonged to James Harold Graven, and he was a chaplain during the Second World War. He joined in 1941 as a chaplain second of class, and he was there with the Beach Commandos during the invasion of Normandy.
Well, that's fascinating. We certainly don't associate chaplains and commandos.
Exactly, yeah. He was definitely an interesting case, but he was there to help anyone with their mental or physical state. James Harold Graven joined the RCN as a chaplain in 1941. He was posted overseas in 1943, then followed by a posting in Normandy, where he was a part of the D-Day landings as a chaplain. He's well known for riding his motorcycle through the bases of England to help attend to the wounded that were coming back from Normandy. Because of this, he was coined the nickname Invasion Padre.
Well, he certainly sounds like one of those great characters to emerge from the war. You know, not only being a chaplain that was also a commando, but the motorcycle thrown in for good measure as well.
Yeah, he's an interesting man for sure. He later retired in 1947 as a chaplain. And fun fact, he did stay in Admiralty House at Stadacona in 1942 for several months.
Oh, really? So he was in this very building?
He was in this very building, yep, on this floor. When he donated his jacket to the Naval Museum of Halifax, he mentioned that he stayed here in this very house on the second floor for several months in 1942, which is a really interesting fact for us.
Do we know anything about Graven's life before joining the Navy?
He is from Pugwash, Nova Scotia, and he was a chaplain there at his church. But unfortunately, I'm not aware of anything else that he did before the war.
Thank you very much for showing me this jacket and walking me through the story of the motorcycle riding Padre. I'm always particularly interested to hear about the commandos. I have a personal connection to them in the form of my grandfather, who trained with Lovett Scouts during the Second World War. So it's always wonderful to hear the stories of these brave men.
Well, thank you so much for coming out and listening to me ramble about them.
It's been my pleasure.
Coming up next, we'll uncover an 18th century field engineering treatise on the construction of military fortifications that provides an important look at military structures of the period. At the Army Museum, we're delving into the world of military infrastructure with the 1793 Treatise on Field Fortification. This seminal work represents an important period in defensive strategy, offering a detailed blueprint for the construction and organization of fortifications.
You have a document to show me which relates to 18th century field engineering.
Yes, we have volume 2 of a 3-volume set on field fortification that was prepared between 1791 and 1793 at the Woolwich Military Academy in England. Rudyard's Treatise on field fortification is an extremely rare and very valuable artifact from the late 18th century. Quite simply, a field fortification is a defensive position that doesn't have any foundations, normally made out of wood and earth. A permanent fortification is one that is usually built out of stone. Again, the defining element here is it has a foundation.
Without even opening to the pages of this book, I'm already quite intrigued, Kevin. Clearly it's been rebound, but they seem to have saved some of the original leather.
Yes. In 1970, a series of books like this and others around the country were sort of restored through the Museum Restoration Services. Captain Armit, who was the curator, first curator of the museum, he was able to have this put on the dockets. This is an exceptionally rare and important manual from the late 18th century. You see the original leather bounding, and it's been placed on a 20th century sort of backing. So this book was wonderfully restored by the Museum Restoration Services. So this is one of the reasons that this book still is maintaining this amazing sort of condition, as well as the contents of the type of paper it was made from. This paper is what they call rag cotton paper. You have paper that's made out of cloth, so it has a wonderful sort of long shelf life. And that's what this book is made out of, that very specific type of paper.
And speaking of that paper, could we open it up and take a look inside?
Certainly. Okay. So here is the title page. Course of Fortifications, 1793. So this is Charles William Rudyard. So this is essentially like a master's or doctorate thesis, okay? This is an exceptionally rare artifact of this time period. It's like an enormous gem to have in the museum's collection. The manual is, in its rarity on this side of the Atlantic, you don't see a lot of things like that, again, because that would be part of his personal library.
And as you mentioned about the quality of the paper that's used, I'm shocked as you open this up. I mean, it looks very much as I would expect it did the day it was written.
Exactly. It's very, you get a little wear here and stuff like that. But again, this has been around since 1793. Rudyard is actually here in Halifax in 1800. And then he's still in Eastern Canada between 1801 and 1803. And he's working as an engineer in New Brunswick. So this engineer knew Halifax, would have been around during the time of the Third Citadel. He has a very varied career. He moves around a lot, which shows that he was an excellent engineer. He's in demand. Rudyard dies in 1813 in Gibraltar, so he's not very old when he goes. Rudyard is one of the engineers who will be trained at Woolwich, graduates from the Woolwich Academy in 1793, will serve here as an engineering officer in 1800. From 1801 to 1803, he's serving as an engineer in New Brunswick.
Was Rudyard quite an innovator in his time?
When you look at this text, he is a student of the engineering practices of that day. All the engineers of the Western powers throughout the 18th, 19th century, they follow the sort of formulas, the theories created by Marshal Vauban in the 17th century. This fort is a Vauban-style fort. This is one of the last great bastion Vauban-style forts to be built anywhere in the world, the Halifax Citadel.
So that period of design lasted a very long time.
Very long time. The bastion fortifications are a direct relationship for the defense and offense with the introduction of artillery. It maximizes using these geometrical forms to maximize the use of artillery. Again, both in a defensive road and in an offensive road.
Kevin, I'd love to see some more of the contents of this book, maybe something that stands out to you.
In keeping with what we were just talking about in regard to Vauban, here's a great example, okay? Construction following the systems of Monsieur de Vauban. And this is the essence of a bastion fortification. These forms are called bastions, and they're connected by a curtain wall. These are the sort of qualifying elements of design that these are bastion fortifications. You see that here at the Citadel, for example, with the two demi-bastions here on the west front, connected by a curtain wall. Here again, wonderful profiles of those types of walls, okay? So this is a profile view. Here's a plan view. Again, these guys are brilliant. Okay?
Oh my, these are really quite something.
They are. These are all hand-drawn, hand-tinted with watercolors by Rudyard when he's a student at Woolwich. Here's the profile of the interior lines of a fort, okay? Here's another example of the same sort of thing, the details within a fort.
Well, that's interesting, and you can even see the brickwork in that
Exactly,
one.
yeah. Again, permanent fortification, right? You don't see these types of works really in North America, these extended sort of works like this. These are all, again, very European.
And it's interesting, you can see that there are differences, but really that general design carries out throughout the book.
It does. By the 1820s, you're at peace, you have more time, there's a greater amount of money to be spent. They are building, again, like a series of fortifications here at Quebec City, Fort Henry, okay, in Kingston. These are all built into the same construction period, but again, they're all working out of this sort of playbook.
So this was one of the major periods of fortification building in Canada, was it?
For permanent forts like this, bastion-style fortifications, these forts are some of the last bastion-style forts to be built in the world. This piece of work that you see there, again, it's a great way of showing that British services and others around the world, they have a professional attitude to what the tasks they are, especially the engineers.
Kevin, thank you for taking me through the pages of this book. It's been fascinating to dig through the story of field engineering and its evolution, as well as the story of Richard and the role he played.
This, again, is just one of the many sort of amazing artifacts that are in the museum's collection. Quite happy to share it with you and the folks at home. Thanks for coming.
It's been my pleasure.
Coming up next, we'll look at the history of the Stanley Airport, a vital training ground during the Second World War that played a key role in preparing over 900 pilots for combat. I'm on site at the Stanley Airport, which was once a hub for aviation training. Now, it remains a testament to the mentorship and skill development that were crucial in shaping the careers of countless military aviators.
Mark, when you said we were coming out to an airfield, I didn't really expect we'd be trudging through the woods.
Well, yes, we are trudging through the woods of Nova Scotia to find something that's kind of interesting. That's part of the airfield infrastructure that's now sitting here 80 years later. And we actually have a picture that we can actually look at and actually show this is exactly where we're standing, is the 27-yard rifle range. This is what this is.
Except for the trees and the missing door, it looks pretty similar, actually.
Well, it does. And this sort of construction was used right across the country at British Commonwealth Air Training Command bases.
And we're meeting Mike somewhere around here?
Mike is somewhere around here. Hopefully he hasn't been eaten by the bugs, because we're about to be eaten by the bugs. So let's go. I think Mike is around here somewhere. I'm pretty sure he's probably around the bush. Oh, look, there's Mike. Mark. We found him.
Mark, good to see you.
Yeah, Mike. This is Sandy. Meet Sandy.
Nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
Sandy wants to learn more about Stanley Airfield, so I figured that's the best place to start would be here.
This is it. This actually, believe it or not, despite all the trees, this used to be Stanley Airfield. All the buildings were here. As you can see, they've been taken over by the woods over the years, but the one exception is the big structure behind us, the gun butts. It survived all the woods growing up.
So is this pretty well all that remains of that World War II era field?
There are a few bits and pieces out through the trees, and certainly the foundations of the hangar and the taxiways, and of course the airfield itself, the runways, which are still active. But this is pretty much the most noticeable, substantial piece of concrete still standing after all these years.
The airfield we're standing on was carved out of the woods in about 1941. Standard construction of a British Commonwealth Air Training Plan was pretty much the same everywhere across the country. So all the designs for the buildings were uniform. So it's fairly standardized at that point.
So when we heard the term gun butt, what exactly is that, Mike?
Well, it's a common structure in most airfields, certainly during World War II. What you see behind us used to have a big pile of sand here, and the guys would set up several hundred feet down that way and fire their guns into the sand. In other airfields, they also set up an airplane down there and shot the guns into the gun butt to synchronize the guns. But since this was a training base, there were no guns on the airplanes, so it was rifles and handguns shooting at it.
In other words, this would have been a pretty bad place to be standing during that time.
No, I'm sure they had safety guys to be yelling at you right, left, and center. Yes, yeah.
So Mike, what can you tell us about Stanley and why was it here and why do we see this 80 years later?
Well, the Stanley Airfield was built in 1941. It was part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Program. It was called a EFTS, which stands for Elementary Flight Training School. There was 32 such EFTSs across Canada, a part of that huge organization that Canada participated during the Second World War, training pilots and aircrew, navigators, bombardiers for the war effort. And Stanley itself is where there was an intake of 1,500 young men, and this is where the guys got their first taste of flying. They first flew little biplanes, a fabric-covered metal tube with an instructor in the back, and Stanley was part of that initial flight training when they started on their way to becoming pilots or other aircrew.
So what kind of planes would have they been flying?
Predominantly at Stanley throughout most of its existence from March 1941 to January 1944. It was a Fleet Finch, which is a small two-seat single-engine biplane. It was designed as an instructional plane. Of the 1,500 that started out for inductees, about 973 actually graduated out of Stanley and went on to the next level, which was called an SFTS, a Service Flight Training School, to more advanced aircraft, and it was from there that they actually got their wings.
By putting a base like Stanley in the middle of rural Nova Scotia, the impact is going to be significant on every level. The communities that service this particular base really had the benefit because you were providing the local population with access to hospital, to access to entertainment, to movie theater, to all these things that have been built there and that didn't have before.
I'd really like to see some more of the airfield, Mike.
Well, you know what? The best way to do that is from the air. Let's go flying.
That'd be great.
All right, come on. All right, you want to put your headset on?
Sure.
And 59. Clear.
Welcome back to Terra Firma, guys. Thanks, Mike.
That was a good flight.
Thank you so much, Mike. That
My
was
pleasure.
great. It
My
was
pleasure.
great to be able to get up there and see what those brave airmen of the Second World War would have seen.
Yeah, it sort of gives you the feeling, doesn't it, of what they saw and where they took off the same runways. It's good. It's a good experience.
It certainly is.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Thank you
came.
so much.
And you survived, Sandy,
We survived, exactly.
Gee, that was a bonus.
through Mike's excellent airmanship.
Exactly. Made it look easy.
Let's go with that.
Really, when you come to a place like Stanley, time has stood still. If you look at the pictures from 1941-42 of the yellow biplanes lined up on the runways, the background is still the same. There's no changes to that. So in that sense, we really are standing on history, and you can almost hear the history in the wind in a place like this today.
Having special access to go beyond museum exhibits reveals some of history's best kept secrets and most interesting stories. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of military artifacts on another episode of Militaria at the museum.